Hey, it's Bruce with habowskistudio. I'm headed out to a location I kind of scouted out the other day. There's two potentials of a church with a kind of little small barn buildings on the outside of it, and on that same road are some hay bales kind of by the side of the road, and I'm hoping this fog will burn off. And I'm kind of right by the river, of course. You're going to get that a little bit, and we'll see what happens. Anticipating the light to be very good for cast shadows on the barn if I choose to do that, or on the hay bales. We'll find out. That's the whole point of this plein air adventure. So thank you for joining me. Catch up to you later. Bye. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. This little next door to the church, they have a little food pantry, and here's the barn that I think I'm going to try to paint. Set up maybe right here. Okay, hey everybody, I want to thank you for joining me for this plein air adventure of working on the barn. Like I said, I'm going to be doing an 8x12 and using liquid for my medium this time. Starting with a turpentine wash, of course. And so let's get started. And if you're watching this video and find it enjoyable, I invite you to subscribe. For everyone else, thank you for watching. And you can find me on Facebook at habowskistudio, like my page, and my website, www.habowskistudio.com. Let's get started.
Here I'm back at it, painting another barn. Love painting these structures in Maine, tons of them around. Here I am just striking the center part here, and you see me doing measurements with my brush to ensure that I get proper proportions for the composition. Highly recommend doing that. It's a very useful tool to use in the field. And just blocking out the basic shapes here to get the composition going. This one's all pretty much an umber sketch, and normally use that sort of thing, though sometimes I use local color. So now we're going to be getting back into some on-location commentary, so I'll get back to you from the studio here.
So I pretty much have the drawing in. Now if the shadows shift, if it's interesting, especially in here, depending how they shadow shift and highlights I get in the shadows, I can just add those. Sorry, it's going to be a busy road because it's a Monday and 7:30 in the morning, so everyone's off to work, I guess. I'm glad this is my work. That's all I got to say. Now, you got some trees behind the barn, which is going to set off the highlights nice, but I am going to leave some areas that are not there. I'm just going to make some sky parts so I can pull the sky, because I'm going to have sky over here, so I don't want to just have all this dark mass too much. So that's the plan. Just getting in some value tone just to give me some structure here, and then I'll build on that. It's going to be pretty nice. I like the composition instantly. This is why it's nice doing the value sketch. I know it's probably hard to see a little bit, but it's got some good bones right off the bat. And what I've used is for these panels, I bought a panel yesterday, a 2x4 at Home Depot, MDF, cut it up into sizes I wanted, and then I tried this experiment with taking primer, spray paint primer, and rather than gesso, to see how quickly I can get some boards sealed up for painting. And this is one of those boards, and it's definitely a different absorption rate than the gesso. I kind of like it so far. We'll see how it goes. First one I've done painting on. I just did the other panels yesterday, so kind of new at this. I saw it on YouTube, and they actually used automotive primer, which is to me even better because it's of course rated for exterior use, and I think I'll pick up some of that and try that for the next batch, but we'll see how this goes. For surface, and see I got some sky holes up here, I kind of like that. This one actually I'm going to block off. And it's cool, there's a few tree trunks over here pulled out in the sunlight. Now I'm going to go through and buff out back to the tone, back to the white of the panel. The wipeout technique is not going as smoothly as it does with the acrylic gesso, and I'm pretty confident that's because the acrylic gesso is more, for lack of a better term, plastic feeling, and so it definitely wipes off cleaner, but this is still working enough to take out some of the tone on the board for when I apply the white. It's still a little discolored, and that's okay, but I just want to get some lights in the piece. Just wipe on your paper towel, a little turpentine, pull out, stop, wipe on paper towel, pull out, wipe on paper towel, pull out. Keep doing that process over and over, and you get some lights and darks. It's really effective technique to see how it's shaping up for lights and darks. And you can literally do this for the whole, just block in a painting. Like say you want to get the drawing down and come back at another time to paint. This is one way you could facilitate that process. In some areas I'm not worried about super clean to white, just a nice feeling of it. Okay, I think I've got enough bones here. Just going to pull out a little bit of sun-dappled spots in the grassy area here. And the shadows change very quickly this early in the morning. I mean, that's why I block in quickly with a umber sketch. I highly recommend it. It's just a fast way to nail everything, and then you don't have to worry that you lost your shape that you really wanted. So try it. I highly recommend it. Okay. And I think what's going to help that this is straight on, looking at it straight on, no perspective, is you got a little perspective over here on the right. So I'm hoping that helps out. Let's get some color on. And working in the sky here, I've taken a little, using for my cool blue, a Prussian blue, and mixed a little white with it. And with the leftover white that I used here in these little parts, I've mixed it into that Prussian blue, so it's already a greenish blue, but I like that distant effect for the morning sky. And when I paint, I stroke. I'm not worried about soft edges right now. I'm letting it speak to me, especially as I go up against the tree shapes. I might have a more opaque stroke, I might not. And as it intermingles a little bit with that wet umber layer, I might leave some of that just to facilitate later on when I paint the leaf shapes. Mix up some more paints. I'm not using a lot of liquid because it can get a little glassy and translucent, but it's enough to get the paint moving, and I like that effect. And if you paint on too thick, like here, too dark, you'll see what I can. You are going to have a little darkness as the sky goes up, but depends on your horizon line. Trying to lay this on. That's why I wiped out the area as much as I could with some turpentine ahead of time. You could save those areas, but I just like toning the whole panel. Now I think that's too strong. Now I can get in a little white and lighten it as much as it's easier to lighten a dark color than to darken a light color. If you have that problem with trying to make a lighter color darker, just wipe it out and start over. All right, back to time lapse. Now what I tend to do when I paint in the beginning stages is, especially with this liquid, should tack up pretty good quickly, is I put in some local color pretty much just thinly that I can go push more dark or more light. It's more of a mid area so that I can get some color notes and start building. Hold on. And that way I'm not committing like, oh, this is the grass I want. Very few times do I say, okay, this is definitely a key I'm using for the rest of the painting. I just have some colors that are pretty darn close to what I want. And then I can develop other parts of painting and let it all grow together. So now I'll get some dark green of the shadow, and the key here is to let the light in, especially because the shadow is big. Light is going to be coming in, getting filtered in because it's a big area. If the shadow is like over here in the green, it's going to be a little bit darker. Depends on what's around it, of course, and how the light, if this door was tilted this way, light bouncing off it, that shadow would be light. So things to pay attention to, but let's get the dark green.
Yes, that is very true. You really have to be observant when looking at shadows, seeing how dark they are in relation to what they're near. Check for any reflected lights, that sort of thing. It always can be a challenge, and especially if you're looking into the light. The darks can seem very dark because of all that bright light coming at you, so you need to really compensate for that a little bit so you don't get just black looking objects. Very important to avoid that. You'll see me switch here in a moment to a little bit of a bigger bristle brush to finish blocking in the dark green shadow of the tree on the ground. It's real important to get that shadow shape when I first got there with the umber sketch because it changes fast in the morning, very fast. And you'll see, of course, at the end of the video just how much that shadow shape has shifted. So just kind of not too worried about going over the little dabs of green highlights I put in earlier. I'll restructure those when I get into the wet paint of the dark green shadow. It'll look more integrated. Just kind of getting that in there. Smoothing out some of the strokes, not too much, only a little bit of texture in there. Getting it just a bit of texture more with paint. And strengthening that last little bit. Now I'm getting the red of the house in, and we'll go back to on location commentary in just a few seconds.
Purposely using this kind of ratty flat brush, it's kind of beat up, to suggest the shingles in the barn. I'm putting in a base local color, then I'll pull out the different tones. That's the plan. Make sure your angled shadows are straight. Just kind of, and because it kind of pulls up some of the paint underneath back to the base layer, it gives a nice aged look to the shingles, and you can obliterate that as much as you want, but use it to your advantage. Of course, we'll get some aging along the edge where the shingles are discolored and that sort of thing, but looking for base tones. Looking for base tones. So let's get some dark shadows and go from there.
Now I'm getting the shadows in to pull out, get some dimension to everything. Excuse me. Working on that shadow cast down from the building on the side there. It's a nice diagonal. I like that a lot in there. I worked a little bit on darkness in the trees. I didn't go too crazy. That really wasn't the focal point of this painting. I knew I could finesse those more in the studio, so I didn't spend too much time there. Just bits and pieces. Usually with my plein air work lately, it's just been about getting some color notes down. Some I consider finished works of art, but Most of the time I'm going out there to try to learn something about painting from life, not really looking for a finish painting. Normally get to about 85% and then we'll finish it in the studio. Typically, it depends. Some paintings, like I said, go very nicely and they work out pretty well. Here I'm getting the white trim around the windows. You see on the white door that I've added a little bit distressed color with some umber to facilitate the look of scratched up shingles and such on the bottom edge, because the shingles are weathered. I'll manipulate that more once the paint dries in the studio. But now we're starting to see everything come together. And now we're going to go back to some on-location commentary right about now.
Okay, everybody, this concludes this plein air adventure. I like the bones that I have in the piece. What I don't like is the boards that I sprayed with the the spray paint primer. Too absorbent. I don't care for that. And using liquid, it tacked up quite a bit with the combination. And so I'm going to take the boards that I sprayed with the primer and put just one coat of acrylic gesso over them when I get home for to use them later. But I still had fun, and I'm going to go check out the hay bales around the corner that I showed you earlier and see what they look like now and get into another adventure. So I want to thank you for joining me. And if you're not a subscriber, don't forget to. And find me on Facebook at Habowski Studio. Like the page, please. Till next time, bye.